Hey guys, tax attorney Josh Sells here. Another episode of Tax Law Guy. Today we're going to be talking about first time penalty abatement of the IRS tax penalty. Those pesky IRS tax penalties, they add thousands of dollars to your IRS balance. Sometimes it can be up to 50% of your balance. Crazy, right? So you probably heard about the first time penalty abatement. Google it if you haven't. There's tons of information out there. It's a quick phone call to the IRS. It save you thousands of dollars in penalties. That's not what we're going to talk about today. We're actually going to talk about a trick. There's a quick trick where you can literally save twice the penalties. Okay, I'm going to teach you today how to use an IRS computer program glitch against them and to your advantage. And you'll get twice the IRS abatement of penalties. So that's what we're going to talk about today on Tax Law Guy. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk penalties today. Failure to file penalty. It's the late filing penalty. After the due date, you get whacked with 5% of the unpaid tax each month that the return's late. So up to, I think it's about 25% because it'll cap out at 25%. So you're looking at about 5 months, right? So if you're 5 months late, you're gonna get whacked with 25% of your balance. That's huge, okay? We're talking about a late filing penalty, 5 months, 25%. So if you're 5 months late filing your return, you owe $10,000. You're literally going to add $2,500 in late filing penalties, and that doesn't even include the interest. But wait, there's more. Okay, the IRS has got more goodies in its bag for you. They're also going to whack you with the failure to pay penalty. So it's bad enough that the return's late, right? But now that you have a balance, they're going to add 0.5% of the balance due each month up to 25%. So potentially, if you have a balance over 4 years old, you didn't file the return within 5 months of the due date, you're looking at a penalty before interest of almost 50% of the original tax. So in our example, that $10,000, you're looking at adding almost $5,000, okay? That's huge, $5,000 in penalties, in IRS penalties. All right, so let's talk about how do you get rid of those penalties? There's got to be a way, and there is. I'm glad you asked. All right, so here's the example we're going to use, okay? So you owe about $17,000. By the way, this is a real example, okay? This is a client we worked with. So these are real numbers here. This really did happen. Okay, so you owe about $17,000 in back tax from 2017, 2016, and 2013. Okay, you can see it there on the screen. All of your returns have been filed and you are on a monthly installment agreement for the back tax. That's important because you do have to either pay the tax in full or be on an installment agreement to do penalty abatement. So you are on an installment agreement. Let's assume you also had some penalties back in 2012, but that 2012 was already paid in full. So looking at this, you wouldn't qualify for first-time penalty abatement because there is not a 3-year period without penalties immediately following a year with a balance. But this is where a computer programming advantage comes into play. If you don't qualify for the first-time abatement, your next option is reasonable cause abatement. Reasonable cause abatement. What this means is that there's a legitimate reason why your tax was unpaid or your return was unfiled. And you still used all ordinary business care and prudence. That's the key word right there, or key phrase, I should say, ordinary business care and prudence, to meet your federal tax obligations. We don't have time to talk about what all that means, but let's assume that in 2017, when your 16 return was due, that you had a good reason for not paying the tax, okay? Let's say, for example, that in 2017, you were really sick. You lost your job, and you literally had no income. You call the IRS, and you ask for a reasonable cause abatement for tax year 2016. You explain to the IRS over the phone that you lost your job in October of 16 because you were really sick. You explain that you received unemployment, but they did not withhold tax. Thus, you ended up with a balance. You explained that you still made sure that your return was filed on time, even though there was a balance, and you promptly established an installment agreement to take care of the issue. So let's say that the IRS agent, over the phone, using their computer program, the reasonable cause tool, enters all of this information and the program grants you a reasonable cause penalty abatement. Okay, so the computer program is looking for a clear start date and a clear end date for the issue. Okay, that for the issue that gave you the reasonable cause for late paying. It's also going to have questions, yes or no questions, for the agent to input about what you did to mitigate the issue. Okay? And that's that ordinary business care and prudence phrase that we were talking about. So generally, if the amount of the penalty is under $1,000, okay, so that's very important. It has to be under $1,000, and you can give this clear-cut information, the IRS will give you a reasonable cause abatement over the phone. Remember, we're not at this point asking for first-time abatement. There's no dollar limit for first-time abatement over the phone. Okay, so don't get those two confused. We have reasonable cause abatement that has about $1,000 limit over the phone, and then there's first-time abatement. Okay, that first-time abatement does not have a limit. Okay, so keep that in mind. So the computer program gives you your reasonable cause abatement for 2016 and wipes out about $305 in penalties. Well, wait a minute. Why didn't we just do that for 2017? I mean, there's $4,400 in penalties for 2017, right? Well, here's why. If we're doing this over the phone, they generally aren't going to allow reasonable cause abatement over $1,000 to be granted over the phone. You would have to actually write in to request this, okay? And so if you have to write in to request it, this is going to be more heavily scrutinized. Writing in is going to take a lot longer. They're going to look at it manually. It's not the computer program that's going to actually make the decision. So we don't want to do that. So that's why we focused on 2016 because it was under $1,000. Okay, so under 1,000. You had clear-cut start dates and end dates of the issue, right? You lost your job because of an illness, and you know when you were able to start working again. So you had the dates, and you had reasons why you weren't able to pay, and you were able to answer yes to the questions of what you did to mitigate the issue. Okay, so that's why the computer program automatically gave you the abatement under reasonable cause. So let's take a look. What do we do here? We remove $305 from 2016. Okay, stay with me here. We remove $305 from 2016. We're now going to focus on the 2017 $4,400 penalty. Okay, you still with me here? See what we're doing? So you're going to need to wait a couple weeks for your reasonable cause abatement to go through. Check those transcripts. We talked about that in in the last episode. Okay, go to irs.gov, get your transcripts. It's a item by item accounting of your IRS record, tax year by tax year. So that way you can see this. So wait for that reasonable cause abatement that you did over the phone to go through. You'll see that, this example, that $305 come off. Once it goes through, here's what you're going to do. Once it goes through, you're going to call the IRS. And now you're going to request a first-time abatement for 2017. You see, you now qualify for the first-time abate as you have 3 years preceding the balance that has no penalties. So this is where the computer coding comes into play. So the IRS computer is coded to prevent double dipping of the first-time abatement. So if you had penalties removed because of first-time abatement, there's going to be a code put onto your transcripts that the penalty still exists as far as the computer is concerned. Because they don't want people to do first-time abatement for multiple years in a row. That defeats the purpose. So there's a code that when the computer sees this code, it says, whoa, wait, that penalty is, even though we've removed the balance of the penalty, that penalty is still there. So first-time abatements are coded as penalty codes 018, 020, and 021. if those codes are present, the computer at the IRS knows that you already used first-time abate, and it's going to reject the $4,400 first-time abatement request since you already used it. However, we did not do a first-time abatement, right? On that $305, we did reasonable cause. Reasonable cause is coded as code 062. So when the IRS computer scans the 3 years before to see if there was any penalty abatement, it sees 062 and it says, oh, that's reasonable cause. It's as if the penalty never existed in the first place. It doesn't see code 018, 020, or 021 because we didn't do a first-time abatement. So now in 2016, we coded it as a reasonable cause abatement, $305 gone. And then whenever that came off, we called back in, requested a first-time abatement for $4,412 for 2017. The computer checks, doesn't see the first-time abate codes, and gets rid of the $4,400. Okay, so that simple trick, that simple computer glitch that's there in the system, it's going to save you over $4,700 combined. We did 2 different penalty abatements, okay? Well, we did the reasonable cause one to clear out, that way there's 3 clean years. And then we did the first time abatement, okay? So let's recap. First, current and compliant, right? All your tax returns must be filed, at least the last 6 years. You must either be on an installment agreement or your balance has been paid in full. By the way, if it's paid in full, we'd be requesting a refund for the penalty abatement. Okay, so you have all that taken care of. You pull your transcripts, okay, that way you can see each year, see if there's any penalties. You make a little chart, like the one we did on the screen, so you can easily see what your penalties for each year are and the current balance. And then you use this strategy. Do the phone, okay, for the reasonable cause if it's under $1,000. Once you open up that 3-year window, then you do the first time abate. So the only reason we're doing that reasonable cause is if we need to get rid of a small balance to have a clean 3-year period immediately preceding the big penalty that we're trying to get rid of, okay? So then once that's all done, boom, penalties gone, okay? And you can see how we saved over $4,700 with this simple trick. So if you have IRS tax penalties, the first time penalty abatement of the IRS tax penalty, especially for that late filing penalty, that's the big one, is a surefire way to save yourself thousands of dollars. So knowing this little trick on how to take advantage of the IRS computers can save you even more. All right, that's it for this episode of the Tax Law Guy. See you guys in the next episode.